Because when you have a full cup, like when you have all these concepts, oh, I have to do this, I have to have this amount of money in my bank before I'm marriageable or whatever, you're not preparing yourself for marriage. You're actually filling your brain with concepts that makes you very inflexible in many ways. And welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. Today's episode, Benji and I, we unpack specifically why High Noon helps you to prepare for the blessing. Now, this is for the crowd who are thinking about the blessing, and there's one coming up, guys, and a lot of people have a lot of emotions, and in our experience, there's far too many people who feel like they're not deserving of the blessing, they can never go to the blessing because of shame-related stuff. And so we give some really practical ways in which you can prepare for the blessing. And if you are blessed, then this is also a great way for you to prepare for the next phase of your blessing. Because like we say at the very end of the episode, the blessing is meant to be dynamic. Just like your mother's talking about running water, not stagnant water, you would want that for yourself and for your blessing, right? To be a dynamic, evolving entity and enterprise that is getting better and better over time. So in order to prepare for that, you need to understand what it looks like to be prepared. So let's talk about preparation, everybody. It's a great episode. Hope you enjoy. Hey folks.
Hey.
Benji and I have a shirt reveal. Hey, we're wearing collared shirts. We are both, I'm definitely in midlife, and Benji's just kind of testing it out. He's on his way. He's well on his way.
A very early midlife crisis to get a bunch of flamboyant over-the-top shirts.
He's going to start experimenting with different mustaches and whatnot. I think gravity and just genetics have prevented me from a lot of midlife crises. Like I can't be the bearded guy. I can't have a quirky mustache. I just can't do these things. I have to opt out by way of I can't grow mustaches. My biggest facial hair attempt was to grow a mustache for the first time in my life when I was like 37, and it wasn't working. So
I think you can pull it off. It's about just wearing it, you just got to wear it and just be like, this is how I am. This is me. And then
I need 2 months off. I need to go and have my, this is a serious topic, but I think everybody underestimates the value of the second Star Wars, where Luke has to go off into a far off planet and go to a really dark place. Actually, our world tour, I'm going to try to attempt that on a certain level, is to allow people to kind of go to that dark place, because that's where what does he do? He faces his darkest fear. And what is his darkest fear? Is his father. It's crazy. It's like, it's from every kind of like, I don't know, what's that book? Iron John. And like, there's a lot of psychology about the need to confront your shadows. And that's exactly it. And so he goes off to this planet, and like I always think about that phase of life when it's so good for us to like unplug and to have like a dark time where we go and just face our demons. And that's when I would grow a beard, Benji, is when I'm off in the woods for 2 months with nothing but a knife and a loincloth. In Colorado, I think I won't get arrested for that. And I'll just have to survive off of squirrel meat and berries. No, that's when I would become feral.
You do just fine in Colorado.
Yeah, that's when I'd finally fit in. Yeah.
Just hang out in Boulder by the river and you'll fit right in.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yes.
Anyway, everybody, today this is a complete non sequitur, the actual topic of today, but we wanted to spell it out as clearly as we can, like how High Noon prepares you for the blessing in particular. Like, of course, we prepare you for relationships, and in particular, we prepare you for marriage, but also even more in particular, like one of those Russian dolls, like the core of it, this is preparation for the blessing. And if you already are blessed, it helps you to kind of re-experience the blessing once you're a new person. I still don't know. My wife and I were doing Hunduke, and True Father was talking about the cosmic need for rebirth, resurrection, and one other thing. And my wife, because she always asks me, she's so humble and her English is so new still. She's like, what's the difference between rebirth and resurrection? I was like, God, so similar but so different. I don't know. But like, if you are blessed, you do need a rebirth experience and you need to resurrect. Let's just say that. And if you're not blessed yet, then this is a perfect episode for you to listen to, because we're about to enter blessing season. We're going to Korea. Here in this present reality, it's in just a few weeks, and we have 60 candidates, 60 people that are going to the blessing that have been through our programs, and we're always so excited to see them. We have pins ready. We're gonna give them out at the blessing to our couples, high noon pins, just to it's like wink wink, we know you did good work. So yeah, Benji, you worked in the BFM for quite some time, and then you were a bit of a double agent for a while. You did BFM and High Noon, just a lot of letters, you know, HN, BFM combined, just the whole alphabet. And so we've always leaned on you to be our BFM guy. You have all the connects, you have the freshest up-to-date knowledge, and so I'd love to hear from you. Like, let's start at the tippy top. Like, what is the most fundamental thing that High Noon does to prepare people for the blessing?
Yeah, so I'd put it in two categories. One is spiritual preparation, and then one would be like practical, life preparation. And I actually have a quote that I just thought about, and I happen to have it here. So let me okay, so this is from God's Will in the World, which I must say was my number one book when I was preparing for matching and blessing. This was the go-to book. It's a big red book that you'll find in your local church, or for some of you in your home. And it is a compilation of a bunch of speeches from True Father. And I appreciated this book a lot because it got pretty practical. So this is chapter 5, section titled, Your Blessing Should Be Unexpected. Quote, do not worry about anything else for these 7 years, but become literally crazy for God and crazy to serve mankind, forgetting about yourself. All of a sudden, I will say, you are my child. The time for blessing has come. I want you to get blessed. Then you might respond, have 3 years passed already? Oh no, Father. I still have more to do, and I must become more mature. That is the natural response. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were not to tell God that it was time for them to get married. Instead, God was to call Adam. When a News World staff member wrote to me asking, Father, I want to get blessed. Can't you bless me? I wondered, does that brother really know the principle? Another brother was extraordinarily lucky. He was not even a candidate for the blessing, but was just driving the candidates up for the matching. When he happened to be selected, he never expected to be blessed at the time. That should be the natural situation. If you really know the principle, you will know that this is the way the blessing comes, just all of a sudden.
You get sucked into the vortex of the blessing.
That's it. So this is wise and insightful, because Father's saying, after, for context, this is the guy who's matched hundreds of thousands over many decades. And he's just saying, just focus on being you, the best you that you can be. Be the best dang single person you can be. Yeah. And focus on that. And don't worry about everyone's getting blessed this April or whenever. Just focus on your life, your conditions, what you're offering, and your time will come. And when I heard that, I was like, that's awesome. Like I all of a sudden switched in my matching prep from, I'm going to get matched by this date to just, I'm just going to throw up my hands, Father, take the wheel, and see where my matching leads me, right?
And then so it got thrown back in your face when you actually had to choose.
Yeah.
You're like, you choose. And I'm like, okay, you choose. And I'm like, crap.
It literally went the opposite of just what Andrew's talking about is, when you go to Fathers Matching, the entire reason you go is because I don't want to choose my spouse because I don't trust myself. And then Father was like, all right, now you guys need to trust yourself and
You
choose your own spouse.
physically have to point at the person that you want to get married to.
Right. Yeah.
Well, can we just stop for a second and talk about this idea of go crazy for God? This is so vital because it's not about, like, I've seen people take that and become highly unmarriageable, and I've seen other people become extremely marriageable, because what it means is don't become an unrelatable zealot that just knows how to pray and resolves everything in prayer and doesn't know how to resolve things in the other realms of love, which is, the first two is what you're practicing as a single person, as a child, and as a sibling, right? It's the axis between vertical and horizontal is learning how to rely on God instinctually and how to resolve things on a deep level through prayer and whatnot, but also to substantiate that in relationships. You have to have evidence that you are a marriageable person. That's the extreme value of the blessing, is that we're a community of people who are watching each other, not in a gossipy way, ideally. We're still working on that, but just for accountability, to be like, wow, this person's a really stand-up guy, or that's really, that woman has a lot of integrity. And when you prove your kind of consistency, then all of a sudden you become there's like a target on your back, right? And I remember, like, I didn't know until much later, but I had all these people conspiring to marry me to their daughters, or to all these people that I found, thank God, later, after the fact. But there's like a war behind me of all these people, and because I was just focusing on God, and I couldn't care less about all that stuff. I was like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But I wanted to talk about, like, the idea of when you go crazy for God, the healthy way, I think, of interpreting that is that you're kind of emptying your cup. Because when you have a full cup, like when you have all these concepts, I have to do this, I have to have this amount of money in my bank before I'm marriageable or whatever, you're not preparing yourself for marriage. You're actually filling your brain with concepts that makes you very inflexible in many ways. And now you think like you have to be this external version of yourself in order to fit into somebody else's life, but you're now very rigid, and it's hard for them to even fit into your life. But the more that you become an empty cup, the more that you can be marriageable to a variety of different people that would otherwise be impossible. Like, if I were just to look at my wife from a certain perspective, prior to getting blessed, based on externals, like, she didn't know anything about money. She didn't really know anything about psychology or how to deal with certain things. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I just was in a great place at that time where I was just like, yes. And then we figured it out and we worked on it. And I realized that although we were very much opposites, but that became a strength for her, and her opposites of me became my strength so the idea of going crazy for God, I think, is really important in terms of just being the best child you can to as many parents, and to be the best sibling you can for as many brothers and sisters, and also, to have that's kind of like the horizontal, and then vertically to really form a relationship where your compass is God, is Heavenly Parent.
Yeah, how'd you do that? I want to speak to that point on not having a cookie cutter approach to what we think. We tend to think, because we're human, that I know. I know what's good. I know. And we have assumptions that our knowing is the correct thing without even questioning that it might not be the only solution, right? So I was messaging with a sister, brilliant sister. I have to say that because big chance people are listening to this, right? She's listening. Really great, deliberately preparing for Matching and Blessing, listening to all the episodes. And she was like, she said, I want to pursue an international matching, but I don't know if I really want to, because it'll be challenging. All right. And I was like, well, it's a good question. She doesn't want to commit to a conversation, and then kind of back away because it's too far, because she has certain, parameters she's hoping for. And I just said, I responded with a question saying, if you felt God was working 100% in this relationship, would you even care where they're from?
Yeah.
And I said, then answer that, and that's your answer.
Yeah.
Because that can be applied to anything. All the things were like, oh, she needs to speak English this well, or he has to be this tall, or
Yeah.
I mean, those are kind of superficial things, but sometimes internal things like, oh, she has to be completely pure. That's a common one. He has to have never watched porn and has never touched his wiener before, right? Like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is fine, right?
Sure.
But if we put up this filter of like only this, but I'll just tell you, like, if you meet someone and you're like, God is here, like God is really working and this feels right, but you know, he masturbated once, red flag, sorry. Are you really going to let that get in the way? You're not going to care. So don't worry about like the what if scenarios and hypotheticals that are probably not or going to perhaps work out, right? But just like focus. Just be like, I'm just going to go, I'm going to follow God, I'm going to follow my gut, my heart, do what feels right. And eventually it'll get you there, you know?
Well, also with community too, because this idea of like the feeling of God, I think is very subjective, right? And I see that being used for good, like the whole compass thing that I was mentioning, but I also see it being like, I've seen some seriously freaky deaky stuff that's like, oh, but God says, cause I'm okay. It's like I had a dream. And so therefore, that was my example of like, you know, I've seen people change their faith because, oh, I had a dream and True Father told me to do this. And so therefore I'm going to go like, I don't know, do some weird thing. And they're like, well, let me tell you, I once had a dream where a snake had a vest and was eating ice cream. I didn't make much of it, you know, so just chill on that, because we also have, so that's the internal aspect, but then there's the external component of relying on community to bounce back, you know. So if you do have these instincts like God is present, to then bring that back to your parents or to bring it back to your whoever is in your support system, that's your feedback loop to decipher between, you know, sometimes your emotions are exactly, you know, leading you in the right direction. Sometimes it's like your trauma or some you know, other stuff that's leading you in the exact wrong direction because it's fear-based or convenient. So yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction because feelings are important, but they need to be calibrated by some sort of grounded reality, you know, and that happens when you are in communication. And that's the dynamic advantage that we have by having support systems in terms of like the matching and the blessing. I don't think people understand how innovative and amazing the matching is, because it's taking the best of what worked in the past and updating it so that it's relevant to the future. And it's like, imagine taking the best of spirituality and then the best of practicality and combining those things. That's what the matching is in terms of finding your spouse. But you have to leverage both of those things, meaning your spiritual senses and your support system.
Yeah. I love that point. It's very true. It's very easy for us, you know, faithful folks to focus so much solely on the faith part and then forget the, like, what does it actually look like practically to be ready. And one time I was matching supporting for a sister who, you know, said no to a matching process because she said she heard a voice that said, don't do it. And I was like, very kindly, I was like, whose voice? Like, is this a good voice, like a benevolent voice or a malicious voice? Anyways, besides the point, like, we don't know. So I think to your point, that's where the, you know, because I mentioned there's the spiritual side and then there's the practical components. What I usually say, because people get really confused about, you know, finances, how well do I need to be communicator? How well do I need to, you know, all the things that can be the sum, the entirety of being ready for a blessing. I just say simply, the first one is the spiritual, which is like, how's your relationship with God, your parents, and the blessing? Yeah. Period. Right. That's the spiritual side. And the practical side is like, do you have sexual integrity?
Yeah, that's
because
a good marker. Yeah.
Reason, sexual integrity is the solution to the fall. It's the antidote to the reversal of dominion and the fall throughout history. It is what is required in order to fulfill the blessing.
Yeah.
right? Because we talk about sexual integrity like it's some, fad Reddit terminology or whatever, but it's like it's fundamentally, how do you use your sexuality and your sexual organ
And
for
that energy.
for energy, like for what
Yeah.
purpose? As especially as a single person, right? Like not even getting into when you're in a relationship, as a single person, how are you using that? And so for that reason, it has the kind of the lineage aspect of resolving what the reversal of fallen humanity is, which is the blessing through sexual integrity. And on top of that, if you have sexual integrity, there are a lot of kind of add-ons and bonuses. It's kind of like a all-in-one, like one-stop shop for a bunch of features, right? Like
Yeah.
you're able to build community, right? Like you're saying, Andrew, have the give and take with people, especially if you're doing it in community with your parents, with accountability partners, gaining sexual integrity, having open conversations about my sex drive and my sexual organ, my sexual energy. And on top of that, you have accountability, you have the ability to communicate honestly, the ability to mood regulate, to understand my emotions, have self-awareness, right? All inclusively absolutely essential for a relationship, right?
Absolutely.
And then when you bring that, like to answer the basic, like why we're doing this episode, you bring that into a blessing, it's like you can't lose if you have two people that are like self-aware to the point where they're like, I know how to utilize my sexuality for something productive.
Yeah.
In a blessing context, like you can't lose in that situation. Those two people will take full responsibility for their mistakes, for their shortcomings, for their victories, to support each other. They won't feel judgment or anything towards each other. They'll support each other in their journey, right? And so that's the second part that I would say is just like, do you have sexual integrity? To what extent? If not, like work on that. And it doesn't take that long. It just takes being clear, right? And that's kind of also what we're doing in High Noon is we're helping people get clear about the blessing. We're helping people in our programs get clear about who are true parents to me, who's God to me, what is the blessing even about, right? So there's a lot of clarity we're helping people to go into the blessing with.
Absolutely. And I think that's an amazing point because like that energy that you're talking about, I wrote it down. We're going to do an episode about that energy because if you think about what is the energy that created entire, planets and stars and all this, it's that energy. It's the sexual energy of creativity, of giving birth to something, right? It's the exactness and all that. There's an intellect that's kind of in there, but that's not the energy. The sponsoring energy of creation itself is a sexual energy that wants to go through you. And if you use that as a tool of escape, obviously that's not healthy. And if you use that in some weird way to get out your anger, then that's way off in the wrong direction. So to kind of channel the sexual energy correctly in accordance to building a life of like your ideal life, like your Channel Gook life, then that's super important.
Yo, guys, if you are struggling with your sexual integrity, you want to quit porn and masturbation, but you don't know where to start, you've tried everything, there's something you haven't tried, you have not tried, going to our completely free webinar at highnu.org. It is a completely awesome and free and very impactful webinar that's about 30 minutes. It's going to be good. It's good. It's really good. Check it out, highnu.org, if you want to get serious about breaking free from porn and masturbation, or maybe you're kind of serious, maybe on the fence, and just curious. Check it out. Go to highnu.org, and that is a place for you to start to get your life together. All right, see ya.
And so, yeah, with kind of this idea of preparing for the blessing, I think that people think that they need to accumulate things in order to prove that they are worthy, because that's what, our materialistic society says is like, you need to have these markers of wealth prior to being able to be married. And I think I have met people that like are jobless. They're aimless, and they're thinking about going to the blessing. I'm like, no, you're not going to be very helpful because you're just wandering right now. Right. So, but it wasn't about the job itself. It was about, they don't know what to do with their life. And that's just a hard, energy to kind of cope with. But I would say that a truly wealthy person could be dropped off anywhere. And I know these people, these people, and they will make wealth, because wealth is really a mindset. It's a heart set. The spiritual wealth. I know people who are spiritually poor because they're always comparing. They're always worried. They're always judging. That's a sign of spiritual poverty. But people who are spiritually wealthy can build relationships with whomever, wherever, because they find it in themselves to overcome their insecurities, their judgments, whatever. That's what spiritual wealth looks like. And so that, because I remember when I got blessed, I didn't have a bank account. You know, I had to figure all that out. I was a missionary. So like for years I had given up everything. And so I had no money, but I had kind of built myself into the person that is like, I'll figure it out. Like, we're not going to go hungry. I'll make sure of that, because if I have to work in McDonald's or whatever, I'll do it. Whatever it takes. We'll start humbly and we'll build up from there. And I think that is far more important, that internal wealth where you just have the ability to make things happen regardless of your external circumstances. That's far more important than external markers of wealth. And so those are the 5 virtues, Benji. Like, if you practice these 5 virtues, we can drop you off and you just keep on practicing those. You, with any person, you can make it happen. The idea of like preparation for an individual is, yes, you do have to trust your instincts and you have to have conversations, but the variety of options expands greatly the more that you do this internal work. And I see a lot of people getting blessed for the sake of convenience. It's like, I know you, I grew up with you, and there's nothing wrong with that in particular, but it does, if you're not considering people from another country or random people that you wouldn't normally think of, I think it's a missed opportunity, even if you don't get matched with them. Just for the sake of being the type of person that could be matched with some of those people, is limited if you don't do this work, you know?
Yeah. Just so for new people, what are those 5 virtues we're talking
If you
about?
don't have them tattooed somewhere on your body, I just don't even know how to talk to you. Honesty, accountability, grace, integrity, courage. And so, I mean, I'm working on an episode that's going to come out soon about how to actually evaluate yourself in these 5 virtues in terms of the 4 aspects of self, which are the mind, the heart, the spirit, and the body. So like honesty, accountability, grace, integrity, courage, in accordance to your thinking, feeling, your spirit, and your body. And there's a way of kind of looking at how you're doing in these criteria. And I think it's going to become a rubric, kind of like something that you can check in weekly or monthly to see, how am I doing in these areas? Am I growing in these areas? Because if you are, then you're on track to becoming the type of person that can be blessed with and create a thriving blessing with a lot of people. I was going to say anybody, but that's a stretch. That's not true. There are limitations because, you know, let's get honest. But
There's one limit.
Yeah.
Just one.
Just not cat people, okay? Let's not talk about them. Just kidding.
Oh, God.
By the way, funny fact, we were walking yesterday and we found a cat in a bush, and now we have a kitten. It was like this kitten that had been estranged, and it was that's why I didn't sleep last night, because it was meowing the whole night.
And now you're going to disown your children and just become a cat person.
Well, no, now I know exactly what they're doing at this very instant. They're playing with a little kitten.
Fun. About finances, because you mentioned it, it was really funny. I was having a conversation with ChatGPT because people I were talking to kept saying, you know, oh, like, I want to get matched, I want to get blessed, but I don't have a job, right? And so it turns out you guys can do this on your own time. When you ask ChatGPT or you actually look into this, the number one thing that people believe they need before they get married is stability, financial stability. Okay?
Oh, okay.
But interestingly, if you then ask, what is the thing that married people say is the number one thing they need, it is not on the list of most important.
Really?
Is financial stability. Yeah. So there's this discrepancy, right?
What are the things that married people think that?
Oh, I forgot. But it's more like the actual things, like communication skills, you know, keeping your word, that kind of stuff, like skill-based stuff. And then, so I just thought it was an interesting discrepancy between what people believe they need and what reality is when people are actually reach that threshold and are married, you know?
It's very true, and like I don't blame people because we're told this story so much. We're
Narrative.
inundated. I mean, people aren't having kids because they say it's so expensive to have kids,
Narrative.
and they don't understand. Babies are so cheap.
So
Like
cheap.
I was so worried. I was like, I don't know, you might have a baby, and then I was like, oh, they don't eat anything. They just eat breast milk, which comes out of my
Boobs and-
wife.
Boobs
Amazing.
and diaper.
Yeah.
And diapers are optional.
Yeah, there's many different ways. Just hold it over a sink or something. It's just a lot of, yeah, it's super expensive to buy. You could buy probably like a $5,000 stroller, but this is the materialistic side. You don't even need a stroller. You can just like tie it up to you and walk with it, and that's even way better because then they're connected to you. So I would just say that, yeah, in terms of this idea of preparation, young men, because of Instagram and now TikTok, believe that if they don't have $1 million in the bank, if they haven't crushed it since 5 a.m. this morning, then they are not only not like marriageable people, they're not even like, they shouldn't even live because
They're
they're
not
not
going to attract
worthy.
someone. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not attractive.
Yeah.
Like this whole Andrew Tate thing is so ridiculous because now anyway, I could go off for days about this dude, but I was seeing him justify, he was saying that only weak men stay married to the same woman because you're not showing that you're top G. You gotta like dominate women. So like he's off the rail. He's been off the rails, but he hasn't shown himself. But this is very prevalent, is that if you can't like exchange your car for a new, supercar every day, then don't even talk to me. But it's like, that's the sign of great dysfunction, is that you can't commit to anything.
Yeah.
That's fear. That's not strength. It's fear. Anyway.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there is a narrative, and especially in online culture, that you need money in order to attract a woman, right?
Sure.
That is helpful to an extent, but people don't understand that those people, especially like money gurus, influencers, they're looking through a certain lens of trying to attract a specific type of woman.
Yeah,
The woman
who
that
likes
we're
your
trying
money.
to yes, okay. The woman that we're trying to attract is not caring about the stuff that they care about. The woman we're trying to attract is someone who is committed to eternity, the blessing, good ideals, having a family, and raising those children well, right? Very different situation. So I get why there's this kind of collective understanding of like, oh, you got to make money. But the thing is, if you need money to attract a spouse, you're attracting the wrong person to marry, period, especially get blessed with, right? And then to the parenting thing, it's like there is like I think a few reasons. There's like people want to justify not having kids or not having kids yet, and so they make up all reasons subconsciously or consciously. Oh, it's expensive, I've been told. So they try to kind of believe this narrative themselves. But also the people that people are studying, like they kind of propagate these stats on like how much it costs to raise a kid. Those stats are coming from like a very select group of people, if you actually look at them, and they're most likely going to private schools or daycare. And that's what usually makes things really expensive. And like
or
lessons,
designer
all kinds of
clothes.
lessons and all this stuff, right? But yeah, designer clothes, all that stuff. So it's like, talk to someone that's actually raising kids, and you'll get a better idea. So I think it's an exercise of just being mindful of like, where are we believing this stuff that if I can't do something, or I can't get matched with this type of person, or only this type, you know what I'm saying? Like, just being mindful of that stuff. Yeah.
Talk to successful people who have like successful marriages, meaning they really love each other and they care for each other and they've built a strong, powerful love. Talk to them, because I talked to a bunch and I was like, how did you guys do it? Because we have a lot of older first generation who had 4+ kids, sometimes 5-6 kids, and sometimes both of them were missionaries making like no money. I was like, how did you do it? And overwhelmingly the answer was, I don't really remember. We just we were just doing it, and they were in the zone. And that's the other thing, is if going crazy for God is good preparation for the blessing, guess what shouldn't probably stop after you get blessed is going crazy for God. There's many different ways. That doesn't mean just wearing white clothing and fasting all day. That's
Purple
some
jacket.
people's interpretation. It's it can also be like I think the Wolfenbergers building an empire that is going to live on far beyond them and serve people beyond their physical lives, like through High Noon, through their there's so many different ways, there's so many different forms, there's building orphanages, there's all these different things. Like, your imagination is the only limitation, but a couple that goes crazy for God and in their own rhythm too. My wife is really coming alive right now and is going really crazy for God. And I was the one that was super crazy for God, and she was like meh for many years. And now she's really like leading the charge in this woman's era, and she's showing me the standard. And so you'll find it. That's anyway. I feel like the preparation of going crazy for God, again, to kind of define that in practical terms, that doesn't necessarily mean to abandon all practical things, because you could also do that in terms of like going to university and doing really well in school for the sake of God, right? There's all sorts of ways of doing that, but the idea is that you're sacrificing something and doing things out of strength and out of honor and out of virtue rather than out of fear and obligation, and that because that's not a very inspiring state to be in. And likely you might go to the blessing with the same energy, out of obligation, trying to people please, instead of like, I'm ready to like really be with somebody and serve them and to create something special with them. That's only possible when you're in that state. Yeah.
Go crazy for God. Yeah.
What does going crazy for God look like for you, Benji?
For me, what it did look like was conditions. Like, I was the A plus typical, just stereotypical second gen. That was just conditions. I actually looked at my journal a few nights ago with my son Kojin, from when I was 16 years old, and that's when I really started like going mad, insane, wild for God. And I was like, I had a list of 21 days. It was just 21 days of this, 21 days of this, 21 days. It was just an entire page of things that I did. And I remember I would spend like hours in the morning doing these conditions, right? So I was reading that, and if I look back at it now, I would probably not do that. For me, it's doing one thing really well, high quality, like one thing a day, and whatever that thing is, just go all in on that thing, and then just make peace with like, this is my offering today, and that's what I'm doing for God, and it's just for God. It's not to please anyone. It's not to look good, especially. I could be alone in a closet and doing it. It's not
Which
to
you
make
are
me...
often.
Shout out to our closet folks. It's not to make myself feel like I'm doing something to be productive, but it's just my offering. It's just me and God, and I would just do one thing, and probably right now, for me, it's meditation. That'd probably be like the one thing. It's just like sitting and being quiet and listening. Because my form of praying for many years was just speaking really loud and like shouting, just shouting my thoughts and frustration.
Out, no in.
Yeah. And now I'm at a stage where I'm just like, I kind of just want to listen to what people say. I want to hear what God says. I just want to be like in the background and not be talking all the time and just listen. So my meditation or my prayers have become more just listening internally, like what's going on, what is God speaking to me, that kind of thing. And then I just feel better the next day. Like when I wake up, I'm just like, I feel at peace with life and everything. So that'd be it.
Yeah, I think that, so the three forms of connection are, there's four, right? But connection to self, connection to others, connection to Heavenly Parent, connection to your sense of purpose or mission. And I from what you just said, I could see you're saying trust. Imagine that, a great marker for somebody to know if they're really ready for the blessing is like, do you trust yourself? Do you trust others? Do you trust Heavenly Parent? And do you trust that you're a part of some sort of mission or purpose, that you have something. And that doesn't mean blind and just hoping, but it's based on a relationship, a genuine relationship. Like, I trust the process and I'm in it and I'm feeding it, but it's growing. Just kind of like Truvada used to talk a lot about plants and stuff like that, just in terms of like, yeah, when you plant a seed and water it, you have to kind of have faith that it's going to grow into a plant, right? Like, I'm just going to plant the seed and it's eventually going to turn into a tree or a flower or whatever. And there's faith there. And similarly, if you trust the process, and if you trust yourself, and if you trust the Heavenly Parent, that Heavenly Parent has a plan for you and is also preparing somebody for you. This is massively important.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that word, trust. It kind of has like the absolute faith, love, and obedience wrapped into one word, right? Because people hate that word, obedience. In the West, we hate that word. Every time it comes up, people are like, but what if your wife is like this and your mom says this? Like, trust is like you said, it's built on years of just back and forth, like breaking trust, rebuilding trust. And you just know that they have the best intentions, that God has my back, right? Yeah, I think it's a beautiful word, trust.
I think we're good right now. Cool. I think that we given people a lot to think about, but please consider, what does it mean to be ready for you? Please pray this out, and please talk it out with the people in your inner circle if you are blessed. And if you're not blessed, if you're preparing for the blessing. And if you are blessed, then please consider what it would be like to prepare for the next phase of your blessing, because the blessing is not some static thing. It's supposed to be dynamic and evolves itself. That's how we stay fresh and stay new. Our faith is never meant to be the same. True Mother keeps on talking about being running water, not stagnant water. And so the blessing is supposed to be a running blessing, not a stagnant blessing. So to be reborn as individuals within the blessing will create a blessing which is new itself, and it will be life-giving to those in the blessing, meaning you, if you have kids, your kids, and everybody that you come in contact with. So what would it look like to be prepared for this next phase of your blessing, and what might that look like? And when you start to trust that process and feed it, then it will inevitably occur. So thank you as always for listening, and we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
My friend, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, I want to give you guys a little bit of action. If you are someone that wants to receive the blessing in the future, but you're struggling with your sexual integrity, or you are someone that is blessed currently and you're struggling, then we do have an opportunity for you. It's a completely free, totally free, easy to set up webinar for you guys. Go to highnoon.org. It's the first thing on the homepage. It's a webinar that's free. It's good. I put a lot of effort into it. I did, and our team did. So check it out, highnoon.org, so you can get started about getting serious about your sexual integrity. That's where you need to start. All right, do that.